crazy thing that happened was like, I remember when I first made my first $10,000 from my business in a month, and I literally went into a 3-month depression where my
Wow.
business like almost died on me because I did not deserve the money. All my demons came up. I couldn't stand in any goodness. I couldn't stand receiving at that level. And thankfully, I didn't sabotage because I was smart enough to hire someone to help me in the process. Because if it was left to me, I would have sabotaged the shit out of that.
Mm,
You see?
yeah. Yeah.
It's so deep. It's so much deeper than just mindset. And that's what they keep trying to tell us, that it's all in our head. But it's really the
100%.
answers are in our body.
Unleash the untapped potential within you as we dive fearlessly into the realms of healing, personal growth, self-love, and uncharted territories of the human experience. Join us as we navigate relationships, conquer career and business milestones, and explore the depths of spirituality. This isn't just a podcast, it's a manifesto for the resilient, the ambitious, the soul-searching women and men of today. Grab your coffee and let's dive in with Beyond the Surface. All right, welcome back to another episode here on Beyond the Surface. And I am joined with the lovely Gisela, and I am so deeply excited for this conversation. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Ashley. I really appreciate you just taking the time to connect with me. I think we've seen each other's journey from afar, and we've connected deeply. All the couple of times that we have connected, it was like a really deep connection. So it's been so nice
Mhm.
now to touch base again and to be in this podcast with you.
Yes, yes, yes. And before you share more about who you are, I was thinking about this before we jumped on, and specifically because of the conversation that we're going to into. Not that I want to leave a trigger warning, because I don't feel like this could be triggering, but I feel like if anything, I just want to, for those that are listening to this right now, like if you're confronted with anything that comes up for you, just lean into it and just get curious and know that you are safe to feel what's coming up. But I feel like as we kind of dive into a conversation around traumas, and that could look, I always call it like the big T and the little t trauma. Like there's the traumas,
Mhm.
that are really huge and carry so much weight. And there's the other forms of trauma that maybe are not usually seen and recognized. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And if there is anything, any feelings that feel confronting, don't worry. It's all good. And it's just an opportunity for you to lean in and to just notice and pay attention what's coming up for you. But for those that don't know who you are, I would love for you to share who you are. And I know that's such a loaded question, but whatever you feel called to share, I'll let you take the floor.
I appreciate that. Yes. Thank you for that. It's more about being confronting, I think. It's just being
Yeah.
confronted with some truths. But I love that. Guys, if you don't know me, my name's Gisela. I am Colombian Canadian, and I am a business coach slash life strategist. And really, what I focus on is helping women understand how to bring their gifts, their passions, and turning them that into a profitable business. Now, why are we talking about trauma today? Is because I'm a first generation entrepreneur. I grew up not exactly knowing how the entrepreneurial space worked. And with technology, it all changed fairly fast for most of us. But I also grew up extremely traumatized. Most of us have experienced big T trauma, little t trauma, like we call it in the industry. But no matter what kind of trauma, keep us small, obedient, and kind of like rule followers. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that many of us who are here, who are creators and are trying to build for something for themselves, are trying to confront some of the things that keep them small, keep them limited, keep them from being able to embody the most expressed version of ourselves. And that's really what I teach women to do, how to be an embodiment of their greatest truth so that they can create a business from that that is fulfilling, empowering, and they get to define it on whatever terms they want.
I love that. And I feel as well that that is an ever evolving journey. We always like, I don't mean to keep bringing up the layer and the onion, but it's really such a beautiful analogy when you are just on this journey of life. And I truly believe, like, when we come down to earth, we are like here with soul contracts, and we're here to remember. And sometimes we feel like that remembering is going to happen in one moment, but the remembering is this ongoing journey, and you're continuously peeling back these layers and layers and layers. You're going to peel back a layer of something, and then you're going to be called to go deeper.
Yeah.
And it's just ever evolving. And I actually think that that's the fun part of life, that I'm not just going to have this one moment and I'm going to get everything, because I don't want things to just be the same. I want that journey, that evolution, that constant growth. And I feel like a lot of us deep down love that. It's just the change that can be uncomfortable.
100%. And I think one thing I've learned on this journey is to fall in love with the process,
Mm,
which is not something we've been taught ever. I mean, we're taught that there's one path and it looks like A, B, C, D. And if you're lucky, you will have a good retirement. And if not, you'll be working through it. And if you did good, you'll get a good pat in the back. You know what I mean? And I think many of us have kind of taken off our rose color sunglasses and said, okay, well, that's not the reality that I want for myself. And that's not the truth that I feel deep in my bones. But we didn't have words for this. We didn't
mm,
have ways of looking at this and saying, oh, this is what it is, right? And I think that's what happens with trauma. When you have gone through trauma, any kind of trauma, you don't exactly have the words to know what you are going through, what you've just embodied, like what your body has been put through, your mind, your energy, your soul. And so you go around life kind of like lost
mm,
and thinking you're the bad person, thinking there's something innately wrong with you. And thankfully, on this journey, I realized really early on, because my path didn't look like other entrepreneurs. And I said, there must be something wrong with me. I'm like, there must be, because they make it look so easy. And no matter how many self-help books I read, no matter how many exercises on limiting beliefs I did, no matter how many money manifesting rituals I did, it was just not working. And so I had to dig deeper. I had to dig deeper. And that's when I realized that I needed to go into my darkness.
mm,
I needed to go into the places that I had been avoiding, the places that made me not want to look at myself in the mirror, not appreciate who I was, not love my own company, um, violate my own integrity, my own body, my own everything. And this wasn't done on purpose. We all come to this realization in one way or another. But for me, it was having a daughter.
mm.
I remember the moment I got pregnant, praying to God, like, please let it be a boy. Like, I don't want a girl.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
want a girl because a girl, I know what a girl's life is. And I don't want to be responsible for a girl who I know is going to suffer. Like, how do I tell her? Right? And
Wow.
funny enough, I did not find out the sex, and I was sure till the end of pushing her out of my womb that I'm like, this is a boy. I had a name for this boy. His name was Darian. I was so ready. I had dreams about this boy. I said, everybody buy gender neutral things, but it's gonna be a boy, okay? Get with the program. Well, God had other plans for me. God had other
Hmm.
plans for me. And they laid this little child on top of me, and they're like, it's a girl. And I was like, oh my
Oh,
God, it's a
no.
girl. And that's where, like, I think that was my big realization that I said, okay, now I have a girl. What am I going to do about it?
Mm,
Right? What am I going to do about it? Because I know I know what happens to girls. I know what trauma looks like. I know that this world is set up unequally and unfairly. How do I prepare her for this? Right?
Mm.
And that was like my call to my mission. That was my call to my mission. And I said, okay, well, guess what? Now all your demons are going to rise.
They're all going to come to the surface now, that's for sure.
All of your demons are going to rise. And I was not prepared for the wild ride I was about to embark on, but that was my biggest why of why I was ready to confront.
Yeah.
And for all of us, it looks different. It could be we lose a job that we really thought
Mhm.
it was for us. We lose the partner that we idolized. We lose the relationships. Somebody passes away in our family. Um, Something kind of crumbles in
Mm.
our life and awakens us, and there's no going back. You can't unsee what you see in that
Yes.
moment.
Yes. Yes. I
And
resonate so
so
much.
once it's like you get called to war, I feel. And it's this internal war that no one will get to see. Only you and a few people get to see what's taking place. But at first, even for a long while, it will only be you
Mm.
because it's you facing your most inner demons in
Yeah.
the darkest parts of your soul. But it's a choice. It's a choice we make. And it's a choice that a lot of us run away from.
Yeah.
I just chose not to because it was like, I don't want to pass down this trauma to my daughter because that's what my parents did. They didn't clean up their side of the street and they left me cleaning up their side of the street. And I'm
Mm.
going to clean up my side of the street. So my daughter, as much as I can, is only responsible for her side of the street and what she has to fulfill and the role she has to play in this life without picking up stuff that I could have been responsible for.
Yeah. Oof. That gives me chills the way you even just word it, because it's very bluntly true as well. And there's so much grace to have for our parents as well, because I know that they are doing the best that they can with what they had and what they know, and the beautiful opportunity that I feel like when someone is in the family, like yourself, like myself, comes in and we kind of are here to break patterns, break cycles. And I'm a firm believer that the work that we do on ourselves, even though our parents and people in our world may not necessarily be actively doing the work, quote unquote, I I genuinely feel with my entire being that it creates a ripple effect. How can it not? How can it not create a ripple effect? Because we all have an impact just by being us. And
Mhm.
when you're around the people that you're around, it's going to naturally kind of trickle in, and those conversations are going to come up. Those moments where we start to not push back, but we start to question and we start to offer a new way of thinking. And
Mhm.
that's where I feel like there's this beautiful opportunity. It's not always easy to be that person in the family who feels like we have to go first a lot of the times to, and I don't mean that in the sense of being the one that's going to like break all the patterns, but I mean just like it can be exhausting sometimes. I don't know if you feel this, but sometimes I feel this where I just don't want to be the first person to start the conversation that needs to be had. Like I would love for someone to initiate the conversation. And that's not always going to be the case. I can't really control anyone else except myself. And
Mhm.
but the beautiful thing is that we can really break these patterns in our lineages just like with one simple conversation that has with, but what you said most truthfully is that choice that we all have. We can't unsee things, right? Especially when you are confronted and you start to really notice and pay attention to your actions, your way of being, and then you piece together where it comes from, why you're doing the thing. you are then having to make this choice. Am I continuing on with
Hmm.
the same pattern and the same thing, or am I going to choose differently? And I'm curious because you're talking about, like you mentioned, that your daughter, you had her 9 years ago now, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
this was like you had this, moment when she obviously was born, but now we're here 9 years later, and I feel like this is just still continuing for you. Um, like what, I guess, like where did the journey start where you were starting to see some like unprocessed trauma coming up in the way that you were living and just navigating life?
Well, one of my best qualities is how toxic I was. It's the truth. It was my whole personality. And sometimes I do miss it. So sometimes I do miss it. I'm like, oh, can I go back to being toxic, unawakened, and just blissfully ignorant?
Right?
It's like, you know? But the truth is, like, my mask that I've had worn for a really long time was so comfortable. It was painful, but you get used to pain. That's why
Mm,
the word masochists exists. Like you get used to the pain and you actually start to love it because there's a benefit to it. There's
mm,
a very good benefit, whatever it is, right? It may
yep.
make you feel like you are seen, like you're socially accepted, like people are applauding you, like people envy you, people want to be you, but even though you're really not that good or deeply happy inside, but there's benefits, right, to those masks that we wore. And a lot of that was confronting me because I'm like, when I truly asked myself, am I happy, the answer was always no.
Yeah.
And so how can I wish that for my daughter? Because now it's not me I'm thinking about my child. And I'm like, how can I ask her to be happy if I don't know how to be happy? You know, if I don't know how to be happy, how can I teach her how to be happy? How can I show her what happiness is? Because let's be honest, we don't listen to what our parents tell us. We listen to what they do. We see and be who they are, not what they say, right?
Yep. Yep. I was
And
thinking
so,
about this. Sorry, continue.
no. And so I was deeply aware of this because I was the rebellious child. I was the angry child. Since I was young, I knew I did not want to be in a marriage. I was always against whatever authority wanted, I wanted the opposite. And it looked great on paper. People are like, yes, Gisela, you're such a badass. But inside, I was hurting because I went from parts of me, those parts weren't real. I was avoiding a pain by doing something that was on the other extreme painful,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
There was nothing like my truth in it because it was all a reaction to my trauma. So me not wanting marriage was because I hated men because I thought all men were cheaters, right? Me not wanting children was not because I didn't want children, it was because I knew that I would become less valuable to society the moment my body changed, the moment my sexuality wasn't in the game, the moment I wasn't desired. Because one thing for me as a Latina, growing up in the Canadian context, my sensuality, my sexuality was very valuable to me. It got me places, it got me things that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
so I knew that if I was going to have a child, I was going to have to give that up in some shape, way, or form. And so I wasn't nothing from that was from my truth. It was all from pain. It was a reaction to my trauma, to growing up with emotionally immature parents, from growing up being the eldest child, being an immigrant, being the darkest of my sisters, having so many things at play all at once created the perfect environment for abuse, for toxicity, and for victim things to happen to me. You know what I mean? And it was up to me. Like one thing I say, you do not choose where you're born, you do not choose who your parents are, but you choose what to make with what you're given.
Mm,
And that's what I did. I
yeah.
chose.
Mm. I resonate so much with
See if I can turn on
uh,
this light.
again, like there's so much that you shared that I feel like is an opportunity to really look at why we are saying the things that we say that we want. Um, I I thought about this so deeply. It's just I had this exact same experience. Like I was like, I'm good if I don't get married. I'm good by myself because I believed all marriages end in divorce because there was no successful relationship around me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course that was my outcome or what I thought was going to happen. And that's still it's interesting now being in this phase of like planning a wedding and going through this. I see it happen. Like there's still kind of like that thought that's like, "Oh, but what
Mm-hmm.
if?" And I'm like, that's not what I choose because I choose to put all my efforts. You know what I mean? Like I and we all get to choose differently. And what you said too about we witness and what our parents do and not what they say.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was working 3 to 4 jobs at a time. My older sister, it's funny, I had this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, you're like my older sister who she's also a manifester in human design. And she raised me and my other sister. She was our eldest. She raised us. She took care of us while my mom was at work. And then getting into this phase of my life where I entered this world of personal development, I entered this world of entrepreneurship, and it became my entire life in the sense that I worked my full time job and then I was doing my business. And this was me gloating, working 7 days a week until a few years ago, where I realized that I was like, I became this workaholic. I wonder where. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder where this came from. And those things became my identity. All of that became my identity. I am this. I am like the speaker. I'm the author. I'm the person who's doing all these things and doing this. And, but what about my family life? It was shit. I wasn't making time for my family. I wasn't putting in the effort there. And that just became very sad for me. And some of the things from, and this is part of what sparked this conversation, was this reel that you posted. And you talked about like, was I independent or did I just have to learn everything on my own? Yeah. You know, the masks that you talk about, even one that hit me deeply as well was I the party friend or was I just numbing?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just these ones that can just be so confronting and make you question, why do you do the things that you do? And it's not to say, well, now question it and eliminate it, but it's about finding the truth of, is this what I desire? Is this what I want in my life? And is this your truth? Because if it's not, then there's this opportunity to do something and change, right? I've always had this interesting dance around alcohol and wanting to just not consume alcohol, but that's not the norm. And I know there's going to be the uncomfortable questions of, well, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you quit? What do you mean you don't drink
Mm-hmm.
alcohol anymore? You just did. Like it was just New Year's. You just did. And there's that whole piece, but I think it's about like really coming down to like truth, our truths, and really unpacking where all of these things come from.
Totally, totally. And that's the thing, like sometimes our masks, like I was saying before, are so good at hiding who we really are, even from us. And going back to the onion analogy, like there's layers I'm still peeling away at, right? And I'm still continuously peeling away because every society wants us to look successful so that it gives us like a fake sense of safety and security, only
Mm-hmm.
to trap us so that we are spending money and living beyond our means and buying and buying and buying, because the more in debt to society we are, the more we will be forced to work where they want us to work, do what they want
Yeah.
us to do, and not follow what truly fulfills us. And So if we're looking at the system as a whole and we know it's flawed, for me, it's been a rebellion as an immigrant, as a girl that learned to do everything alone, to sit my ass down in my bed and say, I prefer to make less money than do more work. Until I don't
Mm.
learn to work smarter, I'm not going to work harder. And that has been a fucking rebellion against my internal belief system, the way I've been taught to work. Because when you're children of immigrants, they didn't spend time with you, not only because they didn't want to or didn't have the capability to, but they really couldn't because they were working 3, 4 jobs to keep a roof over our heads.
Yep.
And that's the only way they knew how. And so we didn't really have a choice. But we do have a choice, and we are here to change the paradigm, change the dynamics. And it takes deep work, and it takes allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. One thing that I really love about my work is that I'm not afraid to shine a flashlight into the darkness and really like illuminate it. And I always get this visual because when we feel that darkness kind of following us in the back,
Mhm.
it feels huge. It feels like it's going to take over. But the moment you decide to turn around and face it, it's like this little tiny little monster that's just like, meh, 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 meh. Like it's so small because you realize like, oh, I'm an adult now. That's not that looked big because I was younger, because I had less wisdom inside of me, because I knew less. But now I'm an adult and I know more, and I know I can work through this,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we forget how capable we are to navigate and be able to, yeah, navigate the challenges and the darkness that comes up, the things that are coming up for us, the whatever you want to call it, the darkness, the shadow, whatever that looks like for you. We are more capable than we think. And when we feel like we can't do it on our own, that's where we get to ask for help. And I also say that with, I also get that it's so freaking hard to ask for help. And where again, this conversation and preparing for it has just like really, I'm really sitting with why are certain things so difficult and asking for help, because I'm do it all yourself, independent. But the moment that I let my partner in and I just simply say, hey, I really want to do this, it could be as simple as, I didn't get to work out in the morning like I usually do. I know we're coming home from work and whatever. I really want to get my workout in. If you don't mind like starting dinner and making dinner. Like that is such an uncomfortable ask for me to do, and I've gotten better and better at just vocalizing. That's really what it comes down to, is just like letting him in and vocalizing like, hey, this is like what I've decided. And it's not about asking for permission. That's not it whatsoever. It's just, how can we be a team and how can we do this together? And just asking for help in your relationship, from your family, from your friends, like asking for support. And if that's challenging, notice and lean in to where that comes from. Because
Mm-hmm.
for sure that's coming from this place where maybe like there's many things, right? Like you don't feel safe to ask for help. You feel like you've been told or been taught that you've got to figure everything out on your own. I've got to be independent. I got to figure my shit out by myself. I can't ask for help. And it's just not the way that our generation is leading anymore, which is actually so fucking beautiful that we are embracing collaborative energy and support. And it's just so freaking incredible to be living in a world where like this exists. And guess what, we can like teach our parents. I feel like I'm constantly teaching my mother now, like, ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it's beautiful to see. But I want to go deeper than that, because asking for help, a lot of us are really comfortable asking from help, but watch out for when it's from a place of victim mentality save me energy, because
Mm.
even the most independent of us
Mm-hmm.
have that in some way, shape, or form, that we find it easy to complain about something and do it in a manipulative way instead of a, you hear the difference when you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. And then you say it extra loud so that maybe your partner hear, oh my God, I didn't go to the
Mm.
gym today. You
Yes.
see, there's a difference,
Yes.
because I've known both. I've done both.
I
and
get that.
and there's this like, and sometimes it's easy when it comes to one area of your life but not to
Mm-hmm.
the other. So you may say, Gisela, but I always ask for help when it comes to this. But if you really notice, there's certain areas that you're not so willing to ask for help, to look like the vulnerable one that says, actually, I don't have it together when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
my money. I don't have it together when it comes to parenting. I don't have it together when it comes to whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? There, we
100%.
all have a vulnerable area more than the other. So if you find yourself, well, really, I find it easy to ask for help when it comes to house stuff or like whatever, but there's areas, right? To me, for example, it was more than asking for help. It was being able to speak up in without feeling bad that someone's feelings were going to get hurt. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first sense of this that I got was actually during the pandemic when I went to an underground hairdresser.
I know what you mean. I know
You
what
know
you
what
mean by that.
underground hairdresser. I heard of her through a friend, and she's like, she's good. Go to her. She has a home salon. And I'm like, I'm there.
Yep.
So I go to this new hair salon. I ask for a balayage. I hate it. Like she did blonde all the way up. I was like, do you not see my complexion? I'm dark. This is way too blonde. And I was
Mm.
saying this all inside of me, and I'm like, Gisela, just pay her and leave. Just don't hurt her feelings. Just pay her and leave. And I remember just thinking, like, we need to practice saying what we need to say without fearing hurting other people's feelings. Because I went from two extremes where I would be painfully mean, and because I didn't know what my
Mm.
middle ground was, I didn't know how to use my voice in a healthy way. And so either I would swallow my words, drink my own poison, and keep it to myself, or I would spill it like cut knives, and you would leave like with 10 swords across your back. Like you don't even know. Right? And so I remember when I first started practicing this, I was like, hey, I really like the color, but I don't think this is balayage. Can we please like fix this, my complexion? And I was like so scared. I remember sweating my face off, and I was like, can you please just fix it for me? Put a little bit darker. And she's like, oh my God, no problem, for sure, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and I literally was having an internal heart attack. Internal heart attack.
Yeah.
Internal heart attack. And I want to go deeper because I think that part of this is like I feel comfortable with you,
Mm.
but I know that the listeners will really appreciate this sort of insight. But another area where I didn't help feel good saying my truth, speaking what I needed to say without hurting other people or putting myself first, because it's not only about asking for help. There's layers. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
first layer is, can you ask for help? Second layer is, can you say what you mean and mean what you say?
Mm.
And secondly, can you use your voice? Can you speak up for yourself? Can you stand in your integrity and your authority, even if it will piss some people off,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't know the reaction?
Yeah.
And I'll be very honest, a part of that was in my sex life. I did
Mm.
not know how to tell like I know how to be performative. I knew how to be performative. I knew how to put on a show and make them feel good, because that's what I'm like, whatever. They feel happy, I'm happy. I don't care, right?
Yeah.
But when I started to care about my own sexuality, my own sensuality, I was like, wait, but what do I want?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember having this experience where my mode was always to say yes, even if I didn't want to. I was like, sure, why not? Right? And I remember one of my biggest moments of revelation was when I actually, in the middle of the act, said, you know what? I don't want to do it. Can you please get out of me?
Wow.
Yes. Yes. And that was like, and when this guy just like, okay, he's like, that's weird. No one's ever asked me this, but sure, no problem. Like, let's rewind. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like, if this is going to work out, you're going to have to ask me 3 times if I want to have sex. Every time you want
Mm.
to have sex with me. 3 times. Do you want to have sex? The first time I'll probably lie to you and people please. The second time I'll still be doubting myself and try to people please. The third time I'll know I'll have had enough time to sit with myself and say, do I really want to have sex or not? You
Mm.
see? And
Yeah.
so it's in the sneaking ways, because as you peel back the big layers, the layers get smaller in an onion, right?
Yes.
And they're harder to find, to peel off, because then it gets into the taboo areas of our life, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
it's about our sexuality, where it's about saying to someone like, hey, I don't like the way you do that. You know,
Yeah.
did you not see my face? Did this look like a face that wanted to pleasure you? No. Okay, so why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
Like that's when the big moments of revelation, because you are now standing in a bigger truth that's like, it's revolutionary. It really is for
Yeah.
your existence.
Yeah. The one thing that I want to go back to is also that piece around like what you were talking about at the hair salon, and her response was, of course, no problem. And it's like it's this unknown piece and this avoiding, and it's something that I've really witnessed that I do and really have paid attention like where it comes up. And it's in the in the avoiding of the thing that we know we need to do, that we just make it a fucking mountain. Like it ends up being this huge, massive thing, and then you do the thing, and then it's not a big deal. That happened with me when, with vaccinations, and I just innately knew I did not want any sort of COVID vaccine. And I was confronted at my workplace, and I immediately went into, oh my God, like what is going to happen if I choose now not to do this and I stand my ground behind this? And I, before I gave a response, or my decision, there was this like avoiding of it, like avoiding the inevitable that I knew what my response was going to be. And it was going to be, I'm not proceeding with this. I'm not proceeding with getting this vaccination. And this was at the blink of an eye when it was mandatory. And then all of a sudden it went away. And I had to, for a moment, I remember being in my kitchen and firing off this email saying, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm choosing that this is my decision. And I went into the kitchen and I was like, okay, well, what if they come back and they're like, you have to? I tried to visualize myself, and I know you'll understand this. Literally, someone giving me this COVID vaccination, and my body, I can't even tell you, I tensed up so bad and so quickly, and I was like, I can't even do this. Like, I just know, I know for myself, I'm not doing this. And it was in this avoiding of
Mm.
simply just sending out this email that I was avoiding the inevitable. I was avoiding speaking like, hey, this is my decision, and standing behind that. And in the avoiding, I was like, well, what if this is the outcome? What if this is the outcome? What if they say this? We could play every single scenario possible, and we are just creating the worst situation for ourselves. We are making it bigger and bigger and crazier than it has to be. And then what happens? The person says, yeah, sure, no problem. Or in my case, never even had a response and it just went away. I'm like, I stressed about this for like 2-3 weeks and this was it. You gotta be kidding me. Right? Like we make it so much bigger in the avoiding. And that was the thing, is just like when we try to avoid and just like, oh no, I'm not gonna look at it, because we think like out of sight, out of mind. I'm not gonna look at the shadow that's coming up. I'm not gonna look at this, or I'm just not gonna say the thing. it is going to continue to come up and show up in your life in so many ways. And it's just like when you allow yourself to really like take the action, take the step, do the thing, becomes easier. The first time is going to be awful. It's going to be so uncomfortable. Like me, I sweat just thinking about that moment. You know what I mean? Like those really uncomfortable moments, I sweat. I turn bright red, but then it becomes easier the more that you do it. Like anything, right? We build this muscle to
Mm-hmm.
speak our truth. To speak our truth, what I love that you said, from a healthy place. It becomes easier the more that we do it.
Yes, but I also want to premise that because it's really easy to skip over to speaking our truth and making it seem like it was just like a big fear in our head. And a lot of the time
Mm,
it is. But that's why building safety within us is so important. Because when you have suffered trauma, it doesn't come from a just imagined place. That is real
yeah.
trauma that lives inside of you. Where, for example, if I spoke up in my childhood home growing up and said, hey, I don't like the way this is done, that would have serious repercussions. That wasn't like a, oh no, okay, darling, no problem, right? It had actual physical repercussions. And so when you carry that in your body, when you carry that in your system, you have to have the tools to create safety within your own nervous system so
Mm,
that you can graduate to that level of
yeah.
being able to speak your truth and it feel like, oh, it was just the more I practice, the better,
Yeah.
right? Because there is layers to that and sometimes it's so easy because that's what was happening to me. I kept listening to these people saying, well, it was just a mindset thing, it was just all in my head, you see. And that
Yeah.
is true for people who regularly have a regulated nervous system. Meaning, what is a regulated nervous system? It means that your nervous, it knows, it
Yeah.
hasn't spent years leaking cortisol and all these chemical hormones into your body saying you're not safe, you're not safe, right? So if
Yeah.
you have a regulated nervous system, yes, we all have fears and we all have big imagined beliefs because we have programming, but it's a different level if you grew up dysregulated and now are being told it's a mindset thing, it's a thing in your head, if you could just understand it you will be okay. But
Yeah.
it's not, it's a body thing, it's an actual hold, it's a survival response where you freeze, where you stay stuck, where you run or you fight,
Yeah.
right? And so if we don't understand those layers, then guess what? No mindset hack, no amount of working on that muscle will ever make it feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for
You
that.
you will
Truly.
always come back because it that's the problem, right? We're talking from a place of that I got to that point where I had created safety in myself. I had
Mm,
ways to deal with my trauma through somatic movement, through meditation, through Kundalini yoga, through kickboxing. I had ways to get all that energy that was pumping through me when I was in fight or freeze mode, because those were my two
mm,
response. My two extreme response were always fight or freeze.
yeah.
And in some things like relationships, I would fly. Get out of here. Say never.
Yeah. Very easily. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Yeah. And probably to everyone, they're kind of like, what just happened? Oh, she's afraid. What just happened? Like, oh, she's afraid. She's afraid to commit. No.
Yes. No. Right? Because we want to simplify things and we have this black and white way of thinking.
That's true. Yeah.
When in reality, there's so much nuance in this space and in the way and in emotions and in things that we don't know about other people. And one thing I do is I make sure that people have enough space to explore different edges of themselves that have not been possible because the mindset in this all mindset
Mm-hmm.
and like devaluing the fact that trauma is not an excuse, right? And I, for a long time, I really didn't understand until I had to do my own digging into trauma and learn about trauma and learn about the physiology of it, how I hold it in my body, how it shows up through my eczema inflammation, how it
Yeah.
makes me sick when my nervous system is so dysregulated that it really impacts how I show up in my business, in my life, in my partnerships, right?
Yeah.
And why it felt like I would rather drink the poison than say anything because I was used to harming myself, but not
Mm,
used to expressing anything that could harm others
yeah.
in that way.
What I'm curious, like where, what, I'm not, how do I ask this question, but where did you begin with regulating your nervous system? Where does that like starting point look like? Because there's obviously like, hey, here I am now, and I've done the thing, and yes, like exact. And I'm so glad you called me out on that because that's so true. Is that it's not easy, and we do have to go through this process, and we all have things very differently. And so I really appreciate you stopping and bringing this back. Where did that look like for you?
So, the beautiful thing about us as humans is that we can be completely unaware of our trauma and our body still seeks to
Mm,
regulate our nervous system. One thing that I used to say is like dance saved me. And since I was a kid, I grew up in the ghettos of Toronto. I grew up around literally like in front of my apartment, like there were gunshots and like I saw a dead body and like very young age and like I saw a lot of horrible things. And one thing I said always was like, I think dance kept me really in my element. And what is dance? It's movement.
mhm.
One of the biggest sicknesses that we suffer from is our disconnection from our body. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever saw this video of like in the wilderness, like a deer, I think it was, it literally saw a tiger or predator coming and it
Mhm.
froze and it fell.
I've never seen that.
Okay,
Oh my
so this
gosh.
deer fell, it freezes. It's in survival mode. It knows it cannot beat the predator. So it freezes and it fell to the ground. And the predator sneaks by, smells him, and walks away. Because in the human king in the animal kingdom, dead things are what? Poison. Are not good. They're bad. If they're already
Mm,
dead, they're not fresh. So and all of a
interesting.
sudden you see this little deer all of a sudden wait and then it gets up and it shakes. It literally shakes, 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 shakes. And I was like, wow, it's happening in nature. And so I want to tie this back to dance because our, and not even just dance, but our unconscious awareness, our human body knows it needs movement. That's why
Mhm.
if you were in sports growing up, if you were in dance, if you were in anything that was active, running, cycling, anything that was driving your passion in that way, it probably helped you regulate a lot of the time. Because what you need to do to regulate your system is come back into your body and feel where you feel your tightness, where you feel like when those emotions hit, where do
Mm,
they hit? And how can you move something so simple, right? They've tried to really, like the self-help industry, the pharmaceutical industry has really tried to sell us so much that it's tried to disconnect us from our body to sell us back into our body in the most expensive ways.
yeah. Yeah.
And the answer is so simple because it's coming back into your body. Now, it's not
Mhm.
easy because when you're used to being disassociated, when you're used to being away from your body and always in your mind, which is what is promoted in this life that we live, it's think more, calculate more, be more logical, do that with your head,
Yeah.
right? And so, what healing asks of us, what working through with our trauma asks of us to connect to our heart, is to come back down to the most wise organ that we have, right?
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, I was like, wow, dance really did that for me. And our my body has always naturally asked for movement, always, until I realized how much it was helping me process. And it's funny because what got me to realize that even before I knew what I was doing was when I was going through a really tough court battle for my daughter when me and my ex separated. I ended up, imagine being super angry as I'm going through this court battle. A lot of horrible things are being said, a lot of horrible things are happening. And I remember starting kickboxing. And
Mm.
I remember just going hard on that bag and people being like literally, I would show up to the court, like the most graceful, most chill person ever. And I was like, it's because I was learning how to regulate myself without knowing that I was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But it always comes back to the body,
Yeah.
right? It always comes back to the body. That's why our body gets sick. That's why we have so much inflammation cause sicknesses in our body, because it's our body trying to speak to us and say, hello, hello, you're not listening. So now we got to show you that you are not
Mm-hmm.
okay, right? And
Yeah.
so I had to look at myself and say, I'm ready to not be in this fear mode, because I would freeze.
Yeah.
One crazy thing that happened was, like, I remember when I first made my first $10,000 from my business in a month, and I literally went into a 3-month depression where my
Wow.
business like almost died on me because I did not deserve the money. All my demons came up. I couldn't stand in any goodness. I couldn't stand receiving at that level. And thankfully, I didn't sabotage, because I was smart enough to hire someone to help me in the process. Because if it was left to me, I would have sabotaged the shit out of that.
Mm.
You see?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so deep. It's so much deeper than just mindset. And that's what they keep trying to tell us, that it's all in our head. But it's
A
really
hundred
the
percent.
answers are in our body.
And it's always, you want the clarity, well, think like it's always so, it's like you were saying, it's always mental. And I would get these I would get massive headaches when I was just felt like I was in this thinking of mostly trying to figure things out, trying to figure out things in my business by thinking. And yet when I allowed myself to get into my body, for me it was literally like I would go to the gym and I would just feel so much better, and I would notice clarity coming through when I just loosen the grip, let go a little bit, surrender a little bit, and then you go for a walk. No wonder you go for a walk in nature and it's like, huh, things start making a little bit more sense here. you know
Mhm.
Breath work, right? That's still getting into your body and just paying attention to what comes up. There's so many forms and ways that we can move our bodies, and it doesn't have to all look one way. It's finding the way, and through trial and error sometimes, finding the way that
Yeah.
feels really good for you. You kickboxing, right? Like that was such a beautiful, and dance, right? Finding the different ways that your body really loves to move without this expectation of, well, if I do this and I move my body, then it's going to like help me regulate. No, like just like try the things and
Yes.
just like fall in love with that mind, not mind, but like body connection, falling in love
Mhm.
with that again.
Yes, totally. And that's the thing, like, part of this is like, it's an ecosystem of tools that you get to build. You get to build your arsenal of tools, and it's like, and what I tell people is that once you build your toolbox, they can always be evolving, but you always have a solid one, two, three that you can always come back to. And they evolve with depending on the season. Like, I'm in a different season of my life where kickboxing feels hard on my body. It
Mm,
doesn't feel good anymore.
mm-hmm.
And so I'll try something new, right? Try something softer, try something depending on the season of what gets me back into my body. And
Yeah.
so it's just such a beautiful thing to see, but I think we just need to stop making the assumption that we all have the same nervous system, and that
Yep.
somehow, like, and to be honest, the coaching industry very much caters to a more regulated nervous system, and that's why it works. That's what works for them, but it's missing a key component for people who have experienced a lot of trauma. And guess who is trying? Most people who have been through trauma are already the black sheep. They're already the black sheep. So they're definitely in the entrepreneurial space. And we need to make room for them. We need to make room for them. We need to
Mm,
make tools for them. We need to embrace that as part of how we how we lead people. Because if we're not aware of who we're leading, then we're cutting more than half of the population off. Because from what
yeah.
I know, 80% of the world population has gone through trauma, and 20% is probably unreported. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
100%. Or just, denying that there is some form of trauma that you've experienced, like denying that aspect of yourself. um yeah, and you know what, I think just by what you just said, it's just like it allows you to really sit with, it's a very powerful thing to really notice this coaching industry and who it's set up for, and what you just said around like making room for those that do feel like they are the black sheep, or just there is that trauma there. There is that
Mhm.
trauma there. And notice how, as if you call yourself a coach, however you identify or call yourself, but if you are someone who wants to create containers to support and hold space, then you better look at how you can hold space for everyone and not just those that are like you.
Mhm.
And that was just something that what you said really just, yeah, it just really hit home with looking at the ways that I could do better to hold space. Because when we talk about generational healing and when we talk about generational trauma, that runs very deep. That runs very deep. And it's not just something that anyone can step into that space and say, yeah, let me do this. No, like you better be prepared to hold that kind of space, right? Because what, I don't know if you know, I'm just thinking of Emily. Emily and Brand has been like in the back of my mind as we've been chatting, and I think about her and I think about her experiences that she's had in containers, and where she brought things forward and she was shut down and kind of just, oh, it's mindset or whatever it was, right? And it's like, we can't say that we want to create containers like this that are sacred and that honor everyone, and then not, it's not about you knowing all the answers. And that's
Mhm.
the other thing too, as like coaches and being in this industry, you don't have to know all the answers. We forget how much simply holding space can be such a powerful thing for people, for as a space of healing. Whenever I, before I record a podcast episode, like, I had recently a conversation with Tina, and we kind of had this like space, and she was just like, had things going on. It was like her space to kind of just like cry and just let things go. And then it was like, all right, we recorded the most beautiful conversation. And it's just being able to hold space for people. You don't even need to have the answer for them in that moment, right? Just holding that space is powerful.
It is. And it goes back to healing and humility and having
Yeah.
the awareness that it's like, I don't have all the answers. And this is why I say very much that if we don't question the structures that we're bringing into coaching, then we're going to just build like the same structure just in a
Yeah.
coaching container. You know what I mean? Where there's someone at the top and everyone else is below them, which is how every corporation works, which is how every business is run. And and it should really be a leader that got a guide that
Yeah.
leads, but not that this person's at the top knowing almighty, you know? And so I think when you're healing and you accept your own humanity and accept your limitations, but also have faith in your work and like being the space holder, then you will have the humility to, even if you don't have the answers, even if you're still learning, to say, yeah, this is a space that I'm still learning and I'm still wanting to know about. And I do ask myself the hard questions, like, why am I
Mm-hmm.
only attracting this type of client? Why am I resistant to helping these sort of people? I remember very early on when I wanted to help women and I was getting coached by men or mostly cis women, it was like, well, you're targeting the wrong market because
Mm-hmm.
they're suffering and they're in pain and they're broke. It's the problem of being broke. They are on maternity leave and they cannot like they're not going to pay you for this. And so they would literally move me and say, no, you have to serve these types of people. And I'm like, but my heart's asking to help these women because I see their pain, I resonate with their pain, and I want to create for them. And a good coach would have said, wow, that's great. Why don't we look into a membership model? Why don't we look into a, pay scale? Why don't we look into, like something? But no, it was a straight up no. That's just not the market that you're going to make money on.
Mm-hmm.
And since you're the only way to make business is high ticket, well, then that's it. You
Yeah.
see? And it just was never an accepted model. So, and for a long time, I was like, oh no, I guess I just have to find the right audience to pay me. When my heart was always saying, well, I help these women. Like, I want to because that's who I wanted to help, you know?
Yeah. And that's where I think we also move out of finding the one mentor, having the only mentor, and putting that mentor on a pedestal, and their way is the ultimate way. And when you and that also, that mentality gives up your power in so many ways, because you are forgetting that you've got your own little GPS inside of you,
Mm-hmm.
and you have your own little GPS that's going to say, mm, I don't really want to do that. That doesn't feel good to me. But you ignore it. And then you do the thing. And then you say, this doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's like,
Yeah.
I look at it now when now I'm mindful of investing, who I invest in, where the place that it comes from. Am I feeling like I'm lacking something, or do I desire to be in that person's energy and in that person's space? And I just like take a moment and take space to really sit with that. And I also take moments, I mean, as a mani gen, especially with a sacral authority, I'm like the quick decisions. But with investing, I allow myself that space, and I'm like, I'm not going to make this like decision from this place, especially from a place of lack. And that's taken me time to really like understand and pay attention and notice when that comes up. Um, but the perspective that I want to offer is that you can have so many freaking mentors. You could take a little dash of this from one person and a little inspiration of how they maybe run their programs, launch their offers, and then you could take another little dash from somebody else who has maybe a low ticket model that they follow instead of this high ticket. Like that wouldn't resonate with me either. But you get to try things on, and you can also let the things go. And that's the thing, right? Like try the thing on. If it doesn't feel good, let it go. It doesn't have to be your way. It's not the only way. And it's coming back to our internal guiding system that says, this really doesn't feel good for me. And honoring that
Mm-hmm.
and allowing it to speak up, like allowing it to have that space. But it's like when we don't allow ourselves to slow down and sit with ourselves, which also can be filled with, I'm sure, trauma as well, that it doesn't feel safe to be by yourself. But when you get to that space, it's like allowing yourself to say, like, oh, this doesn't feel good for me. And I'm going to honor that, and I'm going to follow that. Yeah.
And if only someone was in that space to say, hey, you don't have to do it the way
Right?
they're saying, right? And it's like, it's just crazy, but it's also, it's a fairly still a new industry, and I think it's a beautiful industry, and I love helping people, and and no one is perfect in this industry, but I think what matters is your heart
Mm,
and what you do every day to better yourself and to expand your awareness, expand your vision for what you're building, and I think this is why I keep trauma at the top of everything that I talk about. I do it with my stand-up comedy, I do it with my business, I do it with everything, because I want people to know that it's like, it's very present. We've just kind of normalized it and made
mm-hmm.
it seem like it's normal, but it's not. And there's other options and there's other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful to you for this conversation, truly. And I'd love for you, on that note too, I'd love for you to share a little bit of where people can connect with you, if you have anything going on in your world, in your business that could support anyone who's listening to this and feels called to be in your energy.
Amazing. Yes. So you can look me up as Gicela Holguin on Instagram. And right now, like a true manifester, I am evolving beyond what I think like I can keep up with. Like my heart is like, yes, yes, and my mind's like, wait a minute, like, hello. A true manifester manner. But right now, what I'm really working on is creating a space where I'm going to be mixing, and I think this is the first time I'm putting it out in this way, but I'm going to be mixing stand up comedy with healing. I want to create a space. Not sure if it's going to be a membership, if it's going to be a course, not sure what it is, but I am going to talk through all these taboo things and actually work on helping you transform and gain new insight into yourself through laughter and through comedy and through being able to see your own pain, your own limiting beliefs, your own ways of kind of painfully existing in the world in a way that you can see them as your superpowers and that we can
Mm,
all heal from them. So I'm working on something like that, thinking of it like my own stand-up comedy special, but like based on different themes within the space, and all of them with the idea of helping you expand your vision of how you see one thing, right?
mm. That's so exciting and also so freaking innovative and new and just freaking fresh. Like, hell
Yes.
yeah, I'm so excited for you. And I'm excited to see that come about and that evolution of it. And for those that are tuning into this and just want to be on that journey as well, they'll have the link below to follow you. And
Yes.
I'm just so grateful for you. This was such an incredible conversation, and I also just I deeply appreciate as well that um you're not someone who sugarcoats anything and there's no fluff, and I genuinely I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I really notice how sometimes like that can be like my space and my energy, and so I don't want that to be the space here. So I really appreciate you really like coming in with that energy, and I appreciate you.
I really appreciate you saying that. It's taken me a long time to get here, and I just have very clearly known that my truth, my honesty with myself and with others, keeps me sober from all my addictions. And every time I try to swallow my own truth, it's like literally like putting my head into, I might as well drink a whole glass, like a whole tequila bottle, because like that's literally what it feels like. It just feels like a
Mm,
major betrayal to myself. So I'm really proud of myself, and I'm glad that you notice it, and I love when people notice that about me because it's something I've really had to work on, and it just makes me happy. It means I'm doing the good
mm,
work that I love, and I'm showing up as the version of myself I know I am.
mm. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. I appreciate you. I love you. And for everyone who's tuned in, we love you. And we'll see you next week in another episode.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.